let's go. Well, welcome to the Pharmacist Diaries podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the time for me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and it's a weekend, so obviously I'm grateful that we get to spend some time together, especially now that we are basically family.
We've been talking about this for a long time.
Exactly, and it's actually happening, and I'm so glad that we're doing it face to face rather than doing it on a video call. I usually kickstart my podcast episodes by starting you way back when, in terms of A levels and kind of deciding why you wanted to become a pharmacist in the first place.
So at A levels, I did maths, chemistry, biology, and psychology. And I knew that I wanted to follow like the sciences. I was out of my siblings, and I was the only one that was into the sciences, my strongest subjects. And at that stage, I had basically had the choice of medicine or pharmacy. And the college that I went to was we had a lot of people going into medicine, preparing for the, I can't remember what it was called, but the pre-exam to apply for universities. And I basically I remember having a conversation with my mum. We were driving somewhere. And I was like, Mum, just tell me, what do you want? What should I pick, pharmacy or medicine? And I actually expected her to just tell me to do medicine. And I was like, okay, I've just got to accept it, go for it. And she actually really surprised me and said, I'm not making that decision for you. This is your life. You decide what you're going to be happy doing. So I gave it a little bit more thought, and I looked into medicine a little bit more, and I thought, you know what, this is a lot of hard work, really hard work. And I think I'll just have a better quality of life and balance doing pharmacy. I had work experience in pharmacy from like a few years before. I knew pharmacists as well. So I thought, it's probably the better route for me to go down because it's more familiar to me as well. So that's what I ended up doing. I was one of the few people, I remember starting pharmacy school, and I was one of the few people who applied directly for pharmacy and didn't get a position through clearance. So that was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, I did it, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I've always been quite academic. So again, students going to university or not going to university, missing lectures and things like that. I was one of those who would make sure that I was at my lectures 9 a.m. if they were at 9 a.m. I didn't miss a class, or very, very rarely. I kind of enjoyed university, that's what it's about. And yeah.
Definitely. I mean, pharmacy was my second degree. So the first one, I was having a lot of fun when I was living in the US. I did go to most lectures, but I might not have been super awake for a lot of them. But when I came back to the UK to do pharmacy, I was super serious and really dedicated to making sure that I was professional and, taking responsibility for attending all my lectures and doing the best that I can in everything that we were expected to achieve.
What was your first degree?
I did biology with a minor in chemistry. So that was 4 years in Virginia. But it was really quite an eye-opening experience because university there is really different to the UK. You can go in without a major. At that time, I was working towards doing medicine and becoming a pediatrician. That was what I thought I wanted to do. And the sciences were the way forward. But in the first year, you get lots of kind of what the equivalent of credits that you would gain in the UK. You can choose from a variety of things outside of your major. So you can do anything from I did weightlifting, arts, interior design, sociology, psychology, a lot of kind of variety of fun, things that you could kind of expose yourself to, learn about general knowledge, and then kind of decide whether or not that's something that you want to go down. I loved the interior design. I'm quite creative by background, and I flourished in that class. But I still felt that sciences were my kind of strong point. So I continued down the medical kind of route. And it was an expectation, I felt, in terms of my family and my upbringing, to go down a very professional career. And medicine was, definitely something that was encouraged in terms of being able to look after myself as an independent woman, be in a career where I don't have to rely on anyone else to kind of look after me. Like when I get married, I'm still independent. That was a big thing that my kind of family talked about and encouraged. Yeah. So I don't think that I looked into a lot of other options. I probably should have, because it was just set in stone. I felt like it was just the pathway that my family just kind of expected me to go down. And it's worked out really well. And there's a lot of positives out of this career journey. But if I was to go back in time now and go back to GCSEs and A-levels, I probably would choose something a lot more creative in terms of what I would want to be doing right now. And because obviously I've been enjoying this podcast, there's actually a lot in terms of journalism, media, communications, and the digital world. Oh yeah, that I can see myself working in. So yeah, I had a lot of fun basically at university. And then when I came back to the UK pharmacy, I was a lot more serious. What was university like for you in terms of what you enjoyed? What aspects of the course were you good at, and how did that help you to decide what you were going to do long term?
Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. It feels like so long ago. It is so long ago. I like I said, I am generally quite academic. So I remember there was a module that I did, actually, the molecular basis of disease. It was one of the options that we had to choose, and it turned out to be the most difficult one. It was recognized as the most difficult one, but I loved it. Like the projects that we did we were allocated projects, and I think my one was on like Fragile X syndrome or something. I'd never heard of it, and I had to write it was practically a dissertation on Fragile X syndrome and its treatment and stuff. And I just loved it. It was so interesting. And it came down, I guess it ticked that kind of more medical aspect. It got that out of me better. I wasn't much of a partier. It was never I'm not much of a partier generally. So I never really got into that side of kind of uni life. But also like my dissertation itself, like it was probably more in the last year and a half that I really kind of excelled and got to grips with it all. And because it was becoming more like reality and the real life of a pharmacist rather than more kind of lectures and learning. I can't remember which year we had labs where we were making creams and emollients and stuff, but I would always remember that as one of my favorite things to do. I can't remember which term it was in either, but anyway, it's funny because reflecting on that now, that's where kind of my journey with Infinity Aromatics started, and it's kind of brought everything together. I didn't think I would ever do anything like that later on in life, and actually, make it into a part of my professional life almost. So it's kind of come around 360 degrees, but it's so much fun. I really enjoyed it when it was happening. I didn't think it was gonna, didn't think I was gonna make anything of it later on, and I have. Completely taken me by surprise. But during university, we had a lot of, we were exposed to like community pharmacy and then hospital pharmacy, and that was kind of it. And I had worked all through university in community pharmacy as well, like especially during the summers and Christmas and summer's holidays and stuff. So it was a regular kind of thing. It was kind of expected of me to continue with my pre-reg in that chemist as well. It was on Camden High Street. It was a great place to work. It was a lot of fun, like super busy. You were exposed to so much. And it had an amazing perfume and cosmetics counter as well. So it was great. But then I think it was in fourth, the summer of the summer of third year, I had a few hospital placements, vacation placements. It was at Whittington Hospital and Barnet Hospital. And it completely it opened my eyes to a completely different world. I had so much fun. It was a lot more clinical, which was, I realised, really more of what I wanted. So then when it came to applying for pre-reg placements, I applied to hospital pharmacies, and it was, I got a few placements. And then I had to make that decision because I had already been offered a community pre-reg placement for the whole year. So yeah, I ended up taking hospital, and that was kind of the beginning of my hospital journey, I guess. I kind of left community behind.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. And it's interesting that you raised quite a few points there. Number one, obviously the 360 with Infinity Aromatics. And now that you think about it and you go back in time, there was some passion there in terms of enjoying pharmaceutics and kind of building tablets and creams and formulations. And you might have enjoyed it, but at that time you could never see where it could lead in terms of a career unless you went to work for a big pharma company. And you were very kind of lab focused and going into an internship or a pre-registration year where you got exposed to that environment. Because back then, when we were both studying, it was very difficult to get a role with pharma or industry.
Yeah.
And also, it was difficult to get placements there, so you don't get the exposure. And it's risky to just do a couple of maybe modules which relate to that aspect of the pharmacy world and then decide that's the kind of job that I want to go into without having any real experience. Like, it's quite intimidating to think, oh, is this something that I could do? And because the masses and the kind of common aspect of pharmacy is going to work in community or hospital, you end up choosing that route without having the opportunity sometimes to highlight some of the skills, and you don't even think about it, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's good to highlight to any students out there at the moment that, and I say this all the time, is that when you're at university, genuinely reflect and write down things that you enjoy. Because once you know what you're passionate about and once you know what kind of lights you and makes you happy, that's where you need to look at that skill and then relate it to a specific job within pharmacy.
Yeah.
For me, communicating with patients was an absolute winner. I used to work in community pharmacy throughout university, and talking to customers, especially regulars, was like the highlight of the day. It kept me going. It kept me wanting to come back to work. It kept me wanting to help people because I just enjoy talking to people. And look at me now, I've got a podcast and I'm still talking to people. So I can see where my passions lie in terms of communication.
Yeah.
And I knew that back then, and I knew that is something that I have to incorporate into my day-to-day life. So it's really valuable when you're at university or even in your early career, is once you get exposure to the environment that you work in, genuinely write down and reflect, these are the bits that I love, these are the bits I hate. And when you then apply for jobs, make sure that you're looking for the qualities, the skills that are going to be things that you enjoy. I can see the other point that you raised is you accepted a community pre-reg year and then obviously change your mind. And this comes up in conversation as well because the timing is really challenging in terms of accepting a position. And this doesn't work so much with pre-regs now or trainee pharmacists because of Oriel. But when you accept your first kind of pharmacist job, it still applies because a lot of interviews for band 6 positions come up at different times of year. And when you start applying for jobs, you could accept something, and then 3 weeks later, another big hospital, for example, has put their adverts out, and you get the interview, and then you're kind of stuck. You know, is it unprofessional to say no to someone and then accept? Of course, yes, it is slightly unprofessional, but it is quite tricky, and you want to make sure that you get the right job. I think one thing that people need to be aware of when you're in a trainee role is to research the hospital and maybe reach out to that hospital prior to those interviews when they come out, or the applications, and go and ask for visits, and truly see what's happening when you go there, and whether or not you feel like you might be able to fit in. And talking to people and communicating with people on the day, you can see people's passion when they're working. You can see what people are doing, what the environment's like. You can walk into a dispensary and see how busy it is, and what you're going to be exposed to from that perspective, and just kind of getting that exposure, because that will help you to decide whether or not that
Mm-hmm.
hospital interview is going to be the one. I know that can be hard, getting time off work, but it just takes a little bit of planning and preparation.
Yeah.
And
it's worth it.
Yeah, agreed. And you don't come across unprofessional, because don't forget that if you say no to that hospital and then next year you apply for another job, they may remember, you know, that you said yes and then turn around and said no. So that's, you know, an important point to kind of take home.
It's really important.
But you took this hospital job.
Yes.
What was your pre-reg year like?
Oh, it was one of my favourite years. There were 5 of us that year, which was more than they normally had there. I think we all gelled very quickly. Actually, 2 of the other pre-regs who were with me we went to university together, but never really kind of socialised together, I guess. We knew of each other. So there was a little bit of familiarity, but we just became like such a good group of friends. It was like, I had the best time. And obviously we learned a lot. We had some amazing rotations. Like the team in general, it was one of the friendliest places that I've ever worked. It wasn't a huge team, but, you know, everyone worked together well. There wasn't that I was aware of. There weren't that many politics, you know, everything just flowed and worked nicely. And then at the end of that, I actually was thinking about going back to university and doing a PhD, because for my dissertation, which was lab-based, I did, surprisingly, quite well. And they actually ended up awarding me a prize at graduation, I think, because I ended up scoring the highest somehow out of my year, which was quite an achievement. Like for me, it was just not something that I expected, because it was just I was doing something that I actually really enjoyed. So then it kind of put me in a situation where I was like, actually, like in my mind, I was thinking I'll do my pre-reg, you know, and then at least I've got the registration. I can go back and locum whenever I need the extra cash, but I would like to pursue a PhD. So I went and spoke to my old dissertation tutor again to see if they had anything going, and, you know, what the process might be to apply and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, he was extremely supportive, but there was just not that much out there, because we were just coming out of, you know, the recession and everything. Things were a little bit difficult. And as a PhD student, you really don't earn anything. And I kind of decided that I don't want to put myself in that situation, where I am pretty much reliant on my family still, even after, you know, all these years of education and grinding and, you know, finally getting to a point where you should be able to kind of support yourself. I just didn't want to put myself in that situation. I wanted some freedom to be independent and look after yourself. So I decided to kind of park the PhD to the side and just apply for jobs. And then towards the end of pre-reg year, there was a principal pharmacist at Whittington who actually was I think he was being seconded to be a chief pharmacist at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital. And he was looking for staff, essentially. The staff at the RNOH it was a tiny team, and he needed to build it. So he asked a few of us if we would be interested, and I took it because I knew that at that point as well, jobs were really hard to come by. I think I'm assuming that you were probably in the same situation, but when we started pharmacy school or were applying for it, jobs were quite plentiful. The pay was pretty good. It was quite competitive. You could, essentially jobs were guaranteed. There wasn't that much competition, and the pay was good as well. And then when we finished, the story had completely flipped. I had so many friends who didn't have jobs to go into after they finished their pre-reg, and they were continuously applying. Even locum rates had dropped, like less than halved, within months. So things were a little bit difficult. And when I was offered this opportunity, I kind of grabbed it because I wanted some certainty. So then I was a bank pharmacist at the Royal National Orthopaedic as a band 6 for about 4 months. And during that time, I was applying for, permanent band 6 opportunities so that I could just kind of keep the momentum going as much as possible. And I ended up getting offered a job at the Homerton Hospital, which is in East London. So it was quite different to what I was used to, but actually going from Whittington, where I did my pre-reg, to Homerton Hospital, they're both kind of district generals. You'd have your rotations and everything, and it was actually a really good experience because it really built my foundation as a hospital pharmacist and in different rotations. So I think my first rotation was gynae and surgery. So I was there for a while, and then I went into so that was also including orthopedics. And then I moved into neurological rehab for a while. I had rotations in like respiratory and endocrinology and hematology. Like, it was a lot of good experience. It kind of gave you a good kind of overview of everything pretty much. But during that time, I suffered an injury to my back, and it kind of really knocked things off kilter. Where I wasn't able to work full time anymore. I had to take some sick leave, and I was when I went back to work, I was part time, like 3 days a week for quite a while, like several years, and it really affected me mentally as well, not just professionally, because I really felt like I was being I was holding myself back, but it was just everything was pushing back, and it wasn't where I wanted to be in life, as a pretty new pharmacist. So from there, actually, that's how I started Reiki. My mom actually found this Reiki practitioner and she booked an appointment for me, and I had no expectations whatsoever because I was like, I was not in a happy place at all. She actually ended up, my appointment was on my birthday that year, actually. And I was just not in a good place. I remember crying in the car on the way to my appointment because I was in so much pain and just sad. It was my birthday. I just wasn't in a good place. And I got there. She literally just lay me down on the bed. She was like, "Relax, I'm going to do my work on you." And when she had finished the session, I opened my eyes, kind of woke up, sat up, and I just felt completely different. It was a massive shift for me where it's such a cliche, but it was like this cloud had completely shifted. And because of that experience, I agreed to do more sessions. So I booked up with her. And then it just continued for months. And I thought, this is amazing. Like, it's completely changed everything for me. It really put me in so much more of a positive mindset. It changed my life, essentially. I started doing meditation. I was building myself physically back up to, managing my injury a lot better. Mentally, it was just a complete flip where I felt much brighter and happier, and it helped me cope with my pain. So then I decided to learn how to do Reiki myself. And I attended retreats and this kind of, I was just working on myself a lot more. And at the same time, I remember I was at Homerton and I was working on my diploma at the same time, as well as doing Reiki and, yoga and going on retreats and that kind of thing. And there was a lot of work that I was putting into myself, and I really wanted to change things because I felt like I was starting from scratch almost. So from there, I actually I started applying for jobs. I had built myself up to a place where I was full-time again, and I started to apply for more jobs because I felt like I needed a change. Because I had just been, there was a lot of trauma associated to those years, and I just needed to move myself out of it. So I was applying for jobs. I actually managed to get a position in a private hospital in central London, which was a bit of a change. I never expected, because I think like you going into pharmacy school, you knew what you're going to do. And then when I made that decision to focus in hospital pharmacy, it was just like NHS, because that's what we do in the UK, I guess, because we have the luxury almost of having the NHS. So yeah, I kind of bucked the trend, I guess, and went into private, which was a very, very different experience. It was not so clinical, actually. It was a great experience, and I was earning more money, which was great. But actually, I did feel like I was being stifled a tiny bit, where I wasn't getting much kind of developmental opportunity. Don't get me wrong, I was exposed to things that I wasn't previously exposed to, like urology and gastro as well, which was fun. I actually learned all about like TPN, and actually started some critical care stuff there as well, which was very different. But there were a lot more challenges associated to private healthcare as well, where you've got to think about, how things are going to be charged, insurance, branding, you wouldn't use generic products. So you really need to be more aware. Pharmacists had to do a lot more in that hospital as well, where the techs weren't, they weren't like medical optimization pharmacy technicians at all. They were dispensary based and would go and do top-ups on the wards, but everything else was up to the pharmacist. So you were doing drug histories, medrec, TTAs. The TTAs were written on the back of a drug chart by a consultant, essentially, because the consultants pretty much do their own work. And there was a problem of the language barrier as well. We had a lot of foreign patients. So I actually ended up learning a little bit of Arabic, which was interesting. Not that I can remember much of it now. So yeah, it definitely had its challenges. And then I came across an opportunity to get a Band 7 position back in the NHS. And I knew that I wanted to get back into the NHS because I knew that there were more opportunities there to progress. So I ended up coming back to the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital.
You're 360.
Another 360. Yeah, it was a rotational Band 7 pharmacist opportunity. This was now probably 4 years after I had originally been there. 4 years after I had left. And it was a completely different department. It was crazy, the change that had happened. The team was a lot bigger. We had more space as well. We had office space, which we didn't previously have. The dispensary had completely changed. It was great. It was a completely different department that I was walking into, and much happier as well. So my first rotation back there was as a dispensary pharmacist again. But with that, it was partnered with like the pediatric ward, and that was actually my first experience of doing peds. But obviously, as I had a little bit more confidence as a pharmacist by that point. So it was a challenge, of course. and it's always a little bit, I know you can 100% kind of sympathize with this, where it's a little bit heartbreaking also when you see children going through some of these things that they experience and helping families cope with it. But yeah, I loved it. It was so much fun. And then, yeah, we had, rotation. So we had bone tumor unit rotation, spinal cord injury rotation, loads of different spine surgeries, joint reconstruction unit. There's a lot going on there, and it's tertiary care, so it's very, very specialised. But I've had so many opportunities there. It's been great. So from a band 7, I actually had the opportunity to apply for a maternity leave cover for our critical care, theatres and anaesthetics, and pain management pharmacist. And that was an 8A role. So I was full of kind of trepidation, filling out that application. I put so much work into it because I was really like, I don't know what, even though, she was actually my line manager as well. So I could have spoken to her about it, but I think I didn't. I lacked that confidence in myself. So I was like, I'm just going to do it and try and keep it as private as possible, just in case I don't get it, because otherwise everyone's going to know. But I ended up applying for it, and I was offered the position, which was a huge shock to me. Because critical care there was a bit of an enigma. No one really got involved in it at that stage. Same with theatres. No one stepped foot from pharmacy into theatres, really. And pain management was something that I was really, really interested in because of my own experience of pain. So actually when after I had my injury and, reflecting on it over the few years afterwards, I really recognised the need to put more effort into helping patients with pain. And everywhere I had worked, I had had a lot of input in the surgical aspect of their management, which was one of the main things that we were doing in all of the places that I've worked. So pain was a big deal. And I was constantly involved in helping patients with their pain. And then doing the Reiki as well was it, because I know how much it helped me. I knew how much it could benefit people as well. So when this opportunity as an 8A pharmacist came up, focusing in pain management, I was like, well, that's a really good opportunity, and it'll give me some scope to kind of be more involved in the acute and chronic pain teams and with patients and their pain in general. So I went for it, I got it. And then that kind of snowballed into everything else. One of the first things I was asked to do there was to review the acute pain formulary and the CD policy and all this kind of stuff, which suddenly became my responsibility. And I was just almost very bewildered, but it gave me a lot more confidence in what I was doing and what I was going to be doing moving forward. And I also felt like I really had to prove myself to not just myself, but to everyone else as well, because I was stepping up as, a rotational band 7 to suddenly this critical care pharmacist who also did theatres anaesthetics, which was completely new for me, and pain management. So then I was asked to start my independent prescribing course, and it made sense for me to focus in pain management for that. So that was my scope of practice. It was acute post-operative pain. And yeah, it's just continued from there. I had a lot of opportunity at RNOH.
I'll step in because you've shared so much.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That's perfect. I've got 10 follow-up questions.
Go for it.
I guess going back to what you kind of originally said about Reiki and your experience in terms of pain, one of the questions I guess I have is that how did you manage your time so well? You're going through something quite emotional as well as physical, you're going through quite a mental challenge. And you said, it was quite a traumatic experience for you, especially to go from a budding kind of newly qualified pharmacist starting out your career and boom, you have to go to part-time work. And that can make you feel quite debilitating because you just don't feel like you're progressing. And I bet part of it was comparing yourself to people around you, that, hey, friends, colleagues, everyone else is, progressing much faster than me, and it's very difficult not to make that comparison to other people. I went through a similar experience moving to Abu Dhabi and seeing all my friends go into band 7s and band 8s, band 8 roles at home. And I felt like, that's where I want to be, and I'm here. And my perception of what I was doing was, I don't know, it was negative at the time because I missed the NHS a lot. And it was only until after, a few years did I realize what an amazing opportunity I did have living abroad. And now I value it massively. So how did you manage your time to actually study and do those retreats, as well as kind of working and looking after yourself? Because you said that you spent a lot of time rebuilding who you were.
Yeah. Gosh, that's such a difficult question to answer, actually. There was so much that happened, because there was an aspect where medically, for me, things weren't happening as quickly as they needed to be. Scans had shown that I either had like a fractured part of my spine, a facet joint, or that it was just malformed to begin with. So there was a question mark there, and they weren't sure of what to do. The surgeon suggested surgery might be a potential option. And having worked in hospital, I really wasn't keen on surgery. Like I really thought of that as a last option. So whilst I was waiting for things to happen, they recommended physiotherapy and conservative management to begin with, which I was very happy with. Everything just took forever. Referrals weren't going through. And then to get an appointment, it took a long time. I mean, compared to what things are like right now, it was probably a lot better. But it still took too long, So then we ended up, my parents actually paid for me to have physiotherapy privately. I had like acupuncture type therapy every few weeks. My mom actually did some research and found this therapy that's available in America, apparently, and like sports and athletes use it to help recover from injuries faster. And she found a doctor who does it here as well. It's not recognised on the NHS, so it's a bit out there. But it's called prolotherapy. Essentially, it's like injecting an irritant solution into an area of injury to initiate healing. I found out that I'm also hypermobile, so my joints are a little bit more flexible than they should be, which also wasn't helping my injury and helping its recovery. So I ended up having this prolotherapy every 2 weeks or a month, I can't remember. But I had several sessions of that. And from being almost like bent over and not able to kind of stand up straight and walk normally, without a limp or some, an uneven gait, it changed everything again. It happened at the same time or similar time as the Reiki. So the two of them worked very nicely together, where the Reiki really helped me mentally cope with my pain. The prolotherapy didn't help my pain at all, but it helped me physically kind of be more stable, I guess. And my posture improved so much from that. And then finally, I think I was offered like facet joint injections or something. So there was some element of pain relief, which was under the NHS. So I had that, and it made things so much better for me. So the three things together really, I guess things worked out quite well in reflection, because it happened at the right time. And when I had the injections, I went into it with a mindset of, if this works, because we weren't sure if it was going to work or not, If it works, I'm going to really make the most of it. I'm going to find like a personal trainer. I'm going to really focus on my yoga and Pilates and things like that to try and, strengthen my core up as much as possible so that this doesn't keep kind of twinging and, it doesn't keep going out of sync. I was getting sciatica pain all down my legs. It was horrible. And it would flare every now and again as well. So I really recognized the need to keep my mental health in check because stress was one of the factors that really affected it all coming back, essentially. And then as time went on and I was able to exercise and really put that physical effort into myself, I realized that when I wasn't doing that, like if I was unwell, I had a cold or a flu or something, and I was just like, I'm not going to this class or whatever. Within a week, I knew that, my pain was back. So I recognized that actually it was this exercise and regular exercise and like the regular meditation, the work on yourself mentally as well was so, so important. And because I was still kind of part-time at that stage and I was starting to kind of work up my hours, I had that time to put into myself as well. So that it was just everything in retrospect. I know at the time it was so difficult because I really felt like I was being held back and I was not where I wanted to be. I was not able to have much of a social life because I didn't have the confidence to go outside, never mind, be able to manage it with the pain either. And I wasn't able to take many analgesic medications because I was having side effects that I just didn't want to deal with. And actually, when the medications that I was taking at the time, which were small dose, like gabapentin and cocodamol, but small doses, they were just making me feel horrible. They weren't helping. And then I ended up experiencing really bad headaches constantly, which I didn't realize. I think it was a physiotherapist who told me actually that it's probably your medications. You've got medication overuse headache. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a pharmacist. How did I not recognize this? I'm also sure that gabapentin gave me tinnitus, which isn't one of the side effects that I listed. But, in retrospect, it's all stuff that had to happen to kind of get me back on the right track and really think of the holistic stuff that helped me and continues to help me. Now I'm at a stage with my pain where I am, it's under control most of the time. I don't consider myself a chronic pain patient anymore because I've not needed to rely on medications. I very rarely take any medications now. I don't really need physiotherapy for my back pain. I'm working on myself, and it's the consistency of doing all of these things that really, really make the difference long term. And that's stuff that I tell my patients now as well, because we can come on to this later, I guess, but I run clinics for chronic pain patients, and it's really all about the consistency of what you're doing for yourself, not about your medications. It is about the physiotherapy, but you can do that by yourself as well once you're shown how to do it. It's about pacing all your activities. It's really about having your mindset in the right place and having the right lifestyle. And because I've worked through it myself, I know that it works.
Yeah, that's perfect. And like you said, working part-time and using the rest of your week to really focus on you. Yeah. And your mum is amazing. And she's helped you loads.
Pretty great.
Yeah, I know. I mean, mums generally aren't.
Yeah,
but that's amazing that your parents, supported you and looked at kind of, alternative ways to improve your mental health, physical health. So that's amazing. And I love that you spent so much time on rebuilding who you were and getting back to that, strong, independent, hardworking woman, that you wanted to be, and not drowning in kind of pain and feeling sorry for yourself and allowing it.
I was there for a little bit, but let's not focus on that.
Yeah, fair enough. And everybody goes through that when they go through challenges. But you've had the willpower, you've had the determination, the motivation to come out of that independently, which is amazing. I also wanted to ask, so you did your Band 7 rotational job and you mentioned that you wanted to apply for this mat leave 8A post. And it's interesting that you say that you kept it quiet, partly because I think there's this perception that in pharmacy that some people have like self-doubt, that you look at other 8As and what they're like and what they've achieved. And again, you make that comparison to the people around you and you have that doubt, like, I'm not quite good enough. And I think this is a really valuable point to bring up, because when you apply for jobs and you look at your essential and desirable criteria, I've done it. You expect that you have to tick everything off in order to apply for the job. And you have to be good at everything on that list. Otherwise, you're not worthy of applying for the job, which is completely and utterly ridiculous and wrong. And there's nothing wrong with the way that you felt at that time, and it's completely natural and normal. But I think it's really valuable to bring up the point that when you do apply for jobs, look at the criteria and think about your motivation to get better in some of those aspects. So you may not have had experience with everything on that list, but are you self-motivated and enthusiastic, and where can you find opportunities in that job to then gain those skills and convincing that employer that I don't have this, but this is what I'm going to do to get there.
Yeah.
So pick me, and, you know, we'll have a successful kind of relationship in building this job together. And it's challenging to kind of put yourself into that situation where you feel like you're not quite good enough, but actually putting yourself outside of your comfort zone is also a strength that everyone needs to try every now and again. And not just wanting to stay in that very, you know, small, comfortable zone. Yeah. It's a good way to experience that discomfort so that you can grow as a professional, and it's really valuable. So you did it.
I went for it.
Yeah.
And do you know, it's funny that you say that, because just a couple of weeks ago I heard this. There's evidence apparently to show that females are only likely to apply for a position if they fulfill like 90% of the person spec or JD, whereas males will go for it even if they only fulfill like 40 to 50%.
I've heard this as well.
Have you?
And it's incredible.
It's so true. And actually, I'm really, really glad that because I didn't fulfill that, I'll readily admit it, I did not fit every point on that JD at all. I didn't have management experience. Like, yeah, I had, you know, helped with training pre-regs and pharmacy students and things like that, but I didn't have management experience. I had no critical care experience. I didn't have formalized like pain experience, or it was completely new. Like the whole thing was new, you know? So for me to go for it, I was, didn't expect it at all. And I did keep it very quiet. And it was more because I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to fail. And I didn't want people to know about my failures either.
That's another good point, though. And something else I was going to raise is that I've spent, you know, quite a few years in pharmacy now, and I see that quite often, that people don't want to let others know that they're applying for jobs because they are afraid of failure. And then the perception of others that, oh yeah, she didn't get that job. She's not that good of a pharmacist. But I mean, again, these are, you know, internal thoughts that people need to sit down and think and reflect and say, it's okay. Part of growing is failing, and part of growing is putting yourself in situations which are slightly difficult. And if you don't get a job, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. The important kind of takeaway point is that why you didn't get the job, and then making the steps to improve yourself so that when you do apply for something similar, that you are that person that's chosen. And it is really hard. And I say to junior pharmacists at work as well that whenever they're applying for jobs, reach out. So don't hide. Don't not tell people that you're going for a position, because actually there are lots of people around you who'll want to help you and support you and give you the advice and the confidence and the reassurance that you can go for that job. And also people around you will support you in terms of interview preparation, mock interviews. There's many times I've looked over people's applications, looked at their CVs, looked at their NHS job, you know, the letters at the, what are they called? My brain's gone. Like the person spec, that you do at the
job ad and all of this kind of stuff.
Like how you go through that. Sorry, my brain is a little bit tired. Lack of sleep from parenting. So, you know, I've supported lots of junior pharmacists with looking at those applications and trying to improve how they've actually documented what they're good at and their transferable skills, etc. And people are willing to support. People are willing to help you to grow, and that's what the pharmacy community is all about, especially if you work in a hospital environment. You've got plenty of people to kind of help you grow. So it's a good kind of takeaway point from what you experienced.
Not just even within pharmacy. Like if you have good relationships with like your ward doctors or consultants, registrars, or your nurses even, like they can help so much. They can give you guidance and ideas outside of just pharmacy. And that's something that actually I've really valued as well. Like maybe I've always had good relationships with the doctors that I'm working with, but having their insight into situations as well makes a big difference. So that's, just another thing, another tip. To the pharmacists out there.
In terms of getting the 8A and starting a management role, did you have staff that you looked after in that job?
So in that maternity cover, I did not, because so they changed it slightly to help me, I guess, because I didn't have the management experience. And I also say to be an 8A there, you need to be an independent prescriber, and I didn't have that. So they changed it a little bit so that I was doing all the clinical stuff, but I wasn't doing the management stuff, and I did it as a band 7 essentially. One point that I think is actually really, really important to make is that it's really so important to put yourself in a position where you're pushing the envelope, you know, you're really putting yourself out of your comfort zone, and may not be financially rewarded for it at that point. But to get that experience is so valuable, because then when you do apply for those opportunities later on, it's there, you've done it, you know exactly how to deal with situations. So that's what happened with this maternity cover. I was doing the clinical side of that cover, but not the management side, which was probably a good thing, because it was a lot. Like the role itself is huge, and then to add on management on top of that, I don't think I would have actually managed, and I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have been able to manage the management side of it very well either. So a lot of my focus was purely clinical. Because critical care was very new to me, I wanted, and there was the opportunity obviously to attend ward rounds, which before I joined wasn't expected. I think at the time, at a similar time, there was a new critical care lead consultant. He had just started as well. I mean, he wasn't new to the organisation, but new to being a lead of critical care. And when we were chatting, and I thought, you know, it's really helpful to me to attend your ward rounds, but they start like, you know, at 8 o'clock or whatever time in the morning. So actually I agreed, you know, I'm just going to come in early, and I know I need to stay until 5, because otherwise there's not going to be anyone to cover in case you need anything up to that point. So it came out of my time, and that was absolutely fine, because I was benefiting so much from it. I learned so much, but also I was able to input all the pharmacy stuff that needed to happen at the same point, and it just made the whole process a lot more efficient. So when the ward was full and there was the adult and the pediatric side, when everything was full, we could take up to like 2:00 in the afternoon to see all the patients, and then it's all the follow-up as well, and then to cover, to do the other bits of the job at this, after that it was a lot. It was a lot to do. There were a lot of times that I stayed late, and at the same time, because I was asked to do the prescribing qualification, the balance of, life balance just became work, work and study. So again, it was a big change, but because I knew, look, it was only going to be short term. Prescribing course only takes like 6 or 9 months at that point. And I knew that it was a maternity cover. So at some point, the 8A pharmacist who went off was going to come back, and she was going to step back into her role. So I just wanted to make the most of that experience because I felt like it was a bit of a gift. And that's what I did, essentially. I really just wanted to prove it to myself that I could do it. I really, really, really enjoyed it. The team on critical care was amazing. And at the same time, I was asked to, as a part of the role, they had actually just set up chronic pain pharmacist clinics. So they are held once each week, and patients referred into the clinic are those who need help with managing their medications, their analgesic medications. And obviously pharmacists are best placed to do that. Traditionally, the doctors or the nurses would help patients with that. And obviously there was a recognised need for pharmacists to get involved in this team. So it happened again at a very fortunate time where I was stepping into this position and was asked to have these clinics. And that's been the one thing that I think I really would like to kind of focus on, I guess, moving forward, because I've put things in place now, not just me, my team, the whole senior management team have helped me put things in place with critical care, especially, so that other people are trained up in it now. It became a rotation for the band 7s. So now I've got other people trained up in it, and I don't have to, it's not just, that pressure is not just all on me, which is really, really helpful. And I can focus my attention in other areas like the management, like chronic pain, like acute pain, in theatre medicines management as well, and anaesthetics. And so because as an 8A, there's so much you can do. And at the time when I was doing the maternity cover, a lot of my attention and effort was going into, hands-on critical care. So we needed to shift things a little bit, and that's happened, fortunately, over the last few years.
But this is all part and parcel of professional development.
Yeah.
And maternity leave contracts are a brilliant way to step up, because it is a 1-year contract, and generally the employer isn't expecting you to fill the original person's role. I did a maternity contract at the Evelina. That's how I got my job there initially. And I definitely didn't fit all of the criteria. I didn't have loads of peds experience at that time. I'd only had a 3-month rotation as a band 6 in my 2nd year of being qualified. And it's been 6 or 7 years since then that I applied for a tertiary centre paediatric role. So the fact that I didn't have that experience, but I was able to sell myself in a very positive way, that I'm willing to learn, I'm enthusiastic, I know what I need to do to grow clinically, give me the opportunity, and I can prove myself that my clinical knowledge will excel significantly just being on the wards and kind of getting into grips with, a job. And it was quite scary when I first started. There were loads of things that were very new to me. There were band 6s and 7s that knew way more than I did. And part of me had to accept that and be okay with that. And I still say that to this day, that it's okay that you work with people who don't have as much experience or are in positions below you in terms of the NHS structure, but you just learn from each other. Be happy with that and grow together. Because if you have the mindset, which is slightly negative, that, oh, I don't know as much and, you know, I'm not good enough, you will never allow yourself to grow, and you'll just live in a very kind of negative world. But I used the Band 7s to learn. There were Band 7s doing PN rounds, and I would join them. I might be in an 8A role, and I actually might be managing that person. But that doesn't mean that you can't learn from that experience. So that kind of maternity leave contract is amazing. And like you said, they didn't make you fulfill the management kind of responsibilities, and it was probably given to someone else. But actually, that's part of the beauty of the NHS, that they can do that, because I didn't have that flexibility like working in Abu Dhabi. It was expected that you filled all the criteria. So the NHS is quite good in that way. And the pharmacist's job that I was covering, I mean, she's been doing pediatrics for 10 plus years, and the education side of the role, she had loads of experience. So it was kind of big boots to fill. Yeah. It was intimidating, but I felt like this is the 1 year opportunity, same as you. Do the absolute best, get as much experience as you can, learn as much as you can, expose yourself to any environment where you can see yourself kind of, you know, experiencing that passion where you could potentially then go into another job. And for me, it was, I've got this maternity leave contract and I really want to stay. I need to prove to myself that I can do it. I need to prove to them that I'm worthy of staying on in a permanent position as well. So that self-motivation and drive was always there. Yeah. But I had the support of a very, you know, family-friendly team. And in pediatrics, they are like that. They are very helpful and kind. Yeah. And if you work in pediatrics, generally everyone around you is just so fun-loving and amazing. It's very different to the adult world. And even the medical teams, you know, very supportive in terms of your education. So that's kind of one point to raise from what you've experienced. I guess another thing to bring up is, good job, by the way, on setting up these clinics and getting other people trained, because that's amazing. I mean, that's service improvement right there.
Do you know, it wasn't, I cannot take credit for that at all. They were all set up before I even stepped into the role. I think my predecessor she did a few clinics herself, and then it was time for her to go off on mat leave. So it was like, okay, it's over to you, go for it.
Yeah, but the idea of getting people trained up so that you are freed up to do other responsibilities that an 8A are expected to do, that's great. You know, so that responsibility, like you said, is not all on you. That's, you know, that's really valuable in terms of being an 8A, is delegating and learning that you don't have to take responsibility for everything, sharing that opportunity, helping other junior pharmacists to grow in terms of being able to run a clinic on their own. Like, that's really exciting. And having that as a rotation in itself is very exciting for them as well.
So actually the 7s aren't doing clinics just yet, but they're starting to cover critical care. And before, like pre-COVID, that wasn't a thing. It was me. And we had just started a rotation prior to COVID happening. And it was quite funny actually, because that Band 7 pharmacist finished the rotation and then left. So I was like, oh no, it's just me again.
Oh no.
And then COVID happened. So it was all, again, very oddly timed. But it's been, we've got to a situation within our department where we were very robust in our team, and we were developing the experience and the exposure. You know, so much happened over a few years where we had, you know, switched our dispensing software. We had opened a brand new hospital building, essentially. So all of our wards have moved into this spanking new building, and it was beautiful and great. And all of the wards had pharmacy rooms, and pretty much everything could be done from those satellite rooms and everything. So we got to a situation where each ward had, you know, a specific pharmacy team. So there was a lot less pressure on dispensary. Things shifted. It meant the whole, like the structure of the pharmacy department itself kind of shifted. And with that shift, I was able to get rotational Band 7 pharmacists. So then even during COVID, we were training pharmacists up on critical care because obviously, there was a lot of effort nationally in training critical care pharmacists up. At the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, we don't generally get really, really sick, unwell, kind of medically unwell critical care patients. They've come for surgery. It's an elective hospital at the end of the day. And yeah, we do have complicated surgeries, and obviously patients are going to have complex histories. So you need to be able to manage those patients and plan and do what you need to do as far as possible to look after those patients. So when I first started, it opened a lot of, it really opened my eyes to things that I probably wasn't looking at before, in terms of their medical history, their risk scores and things like that, and then how to support those patients in their recovery. And then for me to be able to also kind of impart that knowledge on other pharmacists. I've always actually really enjoyed training other pharmacists and, challenging them, making them think about what's going on and learn, essentially. I find it incredibly satisfying. And it's always been a little bit frustrating where I've not necessarily had the time to do that, because when we're putting these situations, and it's, standard across the board, you're juggling that with, covering a ward or seeing loads of patients and that kind of thing. So you're very split. But that's the life of a pharmacist. You're juggling a lot, you're wearing a lot of different hats at the same time. You're supporting your doctors and your nurses as well, and making sure that things aren't going wrong with the patient's medication. So there's a lot that we do think about. On critical care, I feel like it's a little bit more maybe than other areas perhaps, but I mean, I've found it so kind of fulfilling at the end of the day. And then because there are so many different aspects to my job, having the clinics as well, it really makes you switch. It's a complete switch of roles. You're thinking in a different way. My clinics are telephone clinics. I'm not necessarily seeing patients face to face. I'm not able to read their body language or, see what, if it's possible to physically see why they're in pain. So you end up learning a completely different set of skills, and you're really focusing, you're paying more attention to nuances in the way they speak or the words that they use and things like that. You're looking things up a lot more so you understand what their issues might be. And I've been doing these clinics for over 5 years now. And actually, a few years ago, I asked to do a master's degree in pain management to kind of support my more specialism in pain management. And I've just finished, actually, which is great. Such relief. It was a lot of hard work. Again, I think with pharmacy generally, going back to your question, why did you choose pharmacy? A part of me thought that, you're not going to have to constantly be learning, and that was the biggest mistake that I made, in terms of it was just wrong. I was completely wrong. I'm always learning. Pharmacists in general, you can't be a pharmacist and not always be, teaching yourself, either formally or informally. You have to be on the ball all the time and picking up new things. There are new medications, there are new, side effects and new interactions. COVID happens and you need to, reskill in completely different areas, right? But pharmacy does give you balance in life when you can have it, where maybe other professions may not. And working for the NHS is actually it gives you opportunities where other organisations also may not, like you've mentioned earlier as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to evolve with the times as a pharmacist, and actually as a professional, a healthcare profession, I think it's one of our strengths that we are able to multitask to the extent that we do. It's amazing how much you kind of put into your job. And just from the conversation that you've just had and the information that you've just given, you wear so many hats every single day. But it really does build who you are in terms of your career and what you're able to achieve. And it's absolutely amazing. You came into this conversation before we started saying, am I able to, am I going to give your listeners, what they want to hear? And literally you've given everything and more in terms of the person that you are. Think about everything that you've achieved. You've been really determined. You've been, self-motivated, and you constantly want to grow. And pharmacy does give you that kind of like mental strength that you just know in your mind, like, I want to do more because I know it will impact my patients. You've done your diploma, you wanted to become a prescriber, and then to top it off, you're thinking, actually, let me just do a little bit more because it's going to give my patients that, 10% edge on the information that I'm going to provide, the communication that I can improve on, the evidence base on pain management and how I could tweak someone's treatment, but give them a better quality of life. Like, that's what you've done it for. Obviously, you're enjoying the content in the background, but at the end of the day, you're doing it for patient care and no one else,
That's exactly it.
So that is amazing. And I think pharmacy does give you that. It gives you that kind of drive to grow. And I love that about our profession. And it's bloody hard work, and no one's saying that any of this is easy. You give up so much of your time. My family are always teasing me. They're like, are you ever going to stop your degrees? Because you've got like 13 years of postgraduate kind of like university life. Like, when are you going to quit? And I'm like, I'm never going to quit. Like, this is the life of a pharmacist, and it's it's expected, but you want it. Like, I'm in pediatric palliative care now, and I've already kind of started looking at diplomas and master's degrees in that. What can I do to grow in this, profession and in this specialism? And I have to build the courage to ask my management for the money. So, building a business case to do that is something really valuable. And I want to set up clinics now that I'm a prescriber. Of course, I'm on mat leave and things are a little bit slower than I expected. But when I get back to work, this is something that's, I want to achieve. We've talked so much about your career to date, but I really want to learn about your side hustle. Tell me, I guess, you've started doing Reiki, you've finished your studying, but you've built a lot in terms of focusing on pharmacy and potentially doing some Reiki on the side, and it's probably minimal amounts of time. Where did you get to in terms of your life where you started thinking, I want to spend more time on building something outside of my normal pharmacy job? And how did you build your brand effectively?
So, it's exhausting. But look, I learned how to do Reiki because I knew how much it helped me. For anyone who doesn't know what Reiki is, it's a form of energy healing, and on a person and on animals as well, it focuses on your chakras. So there are 7 main chakras, and imbalance in any of those areas can really kind of knock you off kilter. And reflecting on the information that I was kind of given when I was receiving Reiki for my injury specifically, it really, really made sense to what was happening in my life. Essentially, I was part of that information was that I had a back injury, and it was because my root chakra was imbalanced. And spiritually, to help improve that, I needed to become more independent. And at the point of where I was when I received that information, I had regressed massively in terms of my independence because I was becoming so much more dependent on my family. it got to a point where when I first had my injury, I couldn't even open the fridge door without it really, really hurting. Like, I was that dependent on people in my family to help me. So it really put things into perspective. It made a lot of sense to me. And it got me to a point where I wanted to learn how to do it. So I learned how to do it. It helped me kind of treat myself and keep myself in check. So that, again, gave me a little bit more independence. And then going on retreats and things, which my first retreat was in Portugal, and I hadn't flown because I was scared of being on a plane for so many hours and not being able to like move around and stretch, and all this pressure on my lower back. And, it makes you think way too, like, the extent of my overthinking was ridiculous. So I was always talking myself out of situations where I shouldn't have been. But anyway, I went on this retreat and I was fine. We were doing yoga on the beach and doing Tai Chi to when it was like at sunrise and sunset. It was beautiful, and I was receiving Reiki there as well. Like, it was great. I was in pain at some points, and that was okay. It helped me understand that it was okay. Like, nothing bad was going to happen. I can deal with this. It kind of helped me realize that I had the tools to deal with it and it not be, the end of the world. And in practicing Reiki on myself and on members of my family as well, it really just put things in a different perspective. I really valued the way, just the atmosphere in the house, the benefits that we were all experiencing from it was so valuable. And obviously I wanted to do it. You can earn money from doing it, which is great. I wasn't actually I wasn't offering it as treatments to other people at that stage, probably because I didn't have the confidence to. And then it kind of became, back of my mind. I wasn't really focusing on it. I was focusing on pharmacy and building my life back up. And then a few years ago, I randomly saw, as you do, a video on YouTube of how to make candles. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, I've never been a creative person ever. I really didn't connect with that part of me at all. And then I saw this video of how to make candles, and then one turns into like 20. And I was like, oh, this is actually really, really interesting. And in a few of those videos, they were using essential oils, and then I started researching essential oils and different scents and the benefits that essential oils can have, not just in scent, but in therapeutic benefit as well. And as a part of my Reiki therapy that I was receiving, I was having hot stone massages as well with Reiki. And that, they were amazing, extremely therapeutic, beautiful treatments. And there was essential oils being used in that as well. So I already had experienced some of the benefit. So yeah, I just started doing some research, and I was like, I can make a thing of this. So I ended up ordering a ton of essential oils and like other equipment, wax and all this kind of stuff. And actually because at that point I was really in that mindset of therapy. Like, I want it to be therapeutic. So actually my first products were massage candles, where when you light it and the wax melts, you can actually use that melted wax to like massage into joints or wherever you wanted to. Essentially, you could have it just because it smells amazing, but it was also having this amazing kind of pain relieving benefit as well, not just from the massage action itself, but from the oils that are in there. So I was experimenting a lot, just for family and friends, essentially. And then Christmas was coming up. I kind of put it to the side. Christmas was coming up, and we were doing a Secret Santa within our family. And I had picked my sister, who lives in America but was coming for Christmas. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'm going to make her this whole set of products, candles, balms, all these kind of salt scrubs and things like that, because I had everything to be able to do that. And I decided on a whole range of different kind of intentions. And I was really like, it was very homemade. But she really appreciated it, and she used all the stuff. And, the feedback was so positive and fulfilling. I was like, oh, this is I was quite proud of myself, And then I just put it to the side again. This happened over a few years, I picked it up and I would see a video and I'd be like, oh, I want to try that. And I'd do it again and think of other ideas and, just tinker around. And then I was talking to a friend about this stuff that I had, was experimenting with. And he was like, Meeta, you need to make this into a business, right? And I was like, nah, I can't do that. I grew up with parents who ran their own business, and it was literally, 8 days a week, constant go, 6 a.m. to like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and then eat and sleep type lifestyle. It was grueling, and that was their life essentially. And I always told myself I don't want to have my own business. So when my friend told me this, I was like, nope, not interested. And he was like, no, you really should do this. And I started thinking about, what I would call my business and branding and logos and all of this kind of stuff and my range of products. And one thing I was really, really sure about was that I wanted Reiki to be like center of it all. That was so important to me because it's not just about using it on your body, but you can put it into your food, your drinks, your environment, and in products as well. And that was really important to me because I knew the effect that it was having on me because I was using my products as well. And we always had candles burning at home and that kind of thing. So I knew the benefits that I was receiving from it and my friends and family were receiving from it. And I was like, do you know what? Like, it's just about upscaling it basically, isn't it? And getting nice kind of branding and labels and that kind of thing. And boy, did I realize how wrong I was after I started doing everything, because then you need to think about websites and social media and photography and content creation. And, I didn't expect to have to build a website and I was never involved in social media. It just wasn't anything that I wanted. I guess I'm normally quite a private person and I don't post anything on social media normally. And then suddenly I was like, no, you have to put yourself out there. This is it. This is how marketing is done now. So it's been a massive learning curve over the last few years where I've tried to really kind of set this thing up. And at the same time, really focus on Reiki and how to build the Reiki part of my brand and treatments and healings and, crystal therapy and all of that kind of stuff, and intertwining it with pain management as well, because that's how I got into Reiki and then candles and massages and all of that kind of stuff myself. So because the heart of it is I know the benefits of it because I've experienced it myself. Reiki probably saved me from a very different life. And I want to be able to give that to people who are suffering, not just with pain, but anything, It might just be because you want a nice smelling home and walking into an environment which smells beautiful. I mean, it makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I can kind of visualize you at home, kind of getting into your flow state, just enjoying a hobby and being creative, an aspect of your life that you didn't think you had that quality.
Mm.
And pharmacy is not exactly known for creativity in terms of the profession. It's not what you commonly think about, nor do you think about business skills, except if you're going into community pharmacy and kind of ownership of a pharmacy. It's not something that is focused on in university either.
Yeah.
So you just don't have that mindset that I'm business savvy.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, your parents obviously were running a business, and it's just long hours.
24/7.
Yeah, 24/7. And you're kind of on call 24/7 because it is your own, and it doesn't exactly make it, I guess, something that you want to do because you like the 9 to 5 or the hours that you do, and then you turn off.
Yeah.
And you don't worry about work. So it's a very different way of kind of experiencing a job. But when you find something that you're really passionate about, and when you find something that you love, you do it in your spare time. I mean, I went into this podcast in such a similar fashion.
Yeah.
COVID hit. I was teaching students. They had no idea what pharmacists do. Genuinely, first-year students, and it's not their fault. They've come into a career, into a profession that they just mainly know about community and hospital. They know the industry exists, but it's rare to get jobs or challenging, and they think it's too hard. And I was like, well, there's so much more that we're doing, and how can I showcase to young people, and where can I showcase what pharmacists are doing? And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have for years. And obviously my husband had just started one himself because he's in the lifestyle, like the health and well-being space. And I thought to myself, like, I could definitely do things in the podcast world which hundreds, if not thousands of people would enjoy on their commute to work, in their car journeys, sitting at home, relaxing with the headphones on, just learning in a very kind of non-work kind of environment. Like, it's not like, attend a professional lunchtime webinar. It's just enjoy a conversation between two people in your ears. And now obviously you can visualize it in video. And I've surprised myself, and my listeners have surprised me in so many ways. I did not know that this would grow into an international network of over 100 countries in the space of a year and a half. I had no idea. But when I have conversations with a pharmacist, when I'm editing, when I'm doing social media, when I'm on my LinkedIn account, messaging people to come onto the podcast that I don't know, or researching what people are doing out there and would they be suitable to come on this podcast, I'm in flow state. I have no idea what's going on around me.
Yeah.
I am not concentrating on even hearing my children in the background or what's happening with my phone.
Yeah.
I am in total bliss. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And then that feeling has sat with me. And when I think about working on the podcast, I'm up for it. I'm ready. I'm good to go. Like, yes, I want to get into this. And I'm on maternity leave, and I'm really making this podcast grow, and I'm spending my spare time enjoying that. And when you have that passion, and when you can see that it can build into something, it really does motivate you. And obviously that's exactly what's happened to you. And it's happening organically. It's happening at a slower pace than you probably want because you're working full time. But at the end of the day, it's still moving, and you're taking the necessary steps to make it what you want.
Yeah.
And I love that.
It's thinking about, like, when I'm in the zone, like you're saying, and producing these products, like when I'm actually making the products, it's complete zen. Like, I may have had the most stressful week. So much may have gone wrong, or it might have been so busy and like just crazy. But then the weekend comes and I know that I've got to do this, and I may be exhausted, like you can probably empathize with, but you do it. And once you're in that zone, and I'm using Reiki whilst I'm making all these things as well, it's bliss. And it makes, when you finish the process and you come out, you forget everything that's happened. You've come out of that kind of, that state of like, I'm just, really wound up or stressed or, buzzing. You're just balanced. And because we have that passion for what we're doing, it will just always happen naturally. I remember when I was for the range of products that I have right now, the sense when I was putting them together and experimenting with different essential oils. My products are very intention based. So the essential oils and the scents that I wanted to use had to fulfill those intentions. And I haven't studied aromatherapy. I've done a few short courses in essential oils and using essential oils. So using that knowledge and then thinking about our potions and lotions class at university, it put me it was almost like a trance where it just happened. I don't know where this information might have come from, but it just poured out of me, and the final product was like, it worked. Suddenly it just kind of appeared almost, and it just happened so authentically for me. I mean, I did need a little push where I was told, you can make this into a business, but actually following it through and taking my time with it, but doing it the way I want to do it. And I'm very intuitive. I really do try to listen to what my body's telling me, what my mind and soul are telling me. So if I need to sit on things sometimes, I can't always make decisions straight away. I might need a night to sit on it and think, like, what do I actually, or meditate on it and figure out what the right answer for me and my business and my life might be. Because at the end of the day, we are juggling so many different things, and actually if things aren't right for us right now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be right for us a few months later. So I've been doing this through COVID as well, actually, and working full time through COVID, and doing the masters at the same time. It was a lot to juggle. I did bits with Infinity Aromatics here and there. I did Reiki here and there, but having come out of that kind of and finishing my masters, I really, really wanted to push forward, and it's meant a lot of stress. This summer has been crazy. Because I've been writing my dissertation and being unwell at the same time as well. Life still happens. You still have to go through everything that might be coming for you. But you do it because you want to do it, and it's important to you and your experience. Like, I get so much fulfillment from this. I had my first event a month or so ago, and where I was actually talking about my products and like advertising them, and people were asking me questions about, what's Reiki, or what do your candles do, this smell, what essential oils have you used in here, and things. And I didn't realize, people have filmed me talking to customers about it, and that alone feels so weird, but I didn't know that it was happening, so it was fine. Seeing the light in my own eyes of how I have been so happy, just joyful about talking about my business and everything to people and the work that I'm doing, because I am passionate about it. I really do believe in it. It's just a completely different. I don't think I would ever get that from pharmacy, but I also love the work that I'm doing in pharmacy. So trying to converge the two is, I guess, my next aim, the next challenge.
Yeah, that's amazing that you obviously did your first event, and lots of exciting things to come in terms of organic growth and being authentic in terms of where Infinity Aromatics goes. And it's the same for me with the podcast, as it's growing slowly. Well, a lot of people...
No, it's not.
Exactly. It's not growing slowly. I say that to myself because I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to give more. I always feel like I'm not giving enough to my listeners because I want to produce more content. And that takes it back to passion, is that I want to do more and I want more time to be able to build this for the people around me. But I guess from my perspective is that where can people find you in terms of your website and social media so people can have a look?
So I am on Instagram and Facebook at Infinity Aromatics. professionally, I am on LinkedIn, although I'm not very active on there. I work at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital. You can find me on nhs.net, and feel free to email me on meeta.patel3 at nhs.net. I think that's everything.
Yeah, no, I can put all the links in the show notes, and I really genuinely appreciate your time today and everyone who comes on to the podcast. It's very exciting for me, and I'm really grateful that you've shared your story and also shared very personal experience that you went through. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to see what happens with Infinity.
Thank you.